Look at her. Mariama and her beggar boyfriend. Is that the man you are defending? A man who sits in the market with a bowl? Mariama, we went to school together. Have some shame. You want to give your heart to a man who cannot give you a future. Fine. But do not come to us when he has nothing left to offer.
The man they were laughing at was sitting 20 meters away on the steps of Marché Kermel with a cracked bowl and worn sandals and a shirt that had seen better years. He could hear everything. He heard Mariama's friends. He heard their laughter. And then he heard something that stopped him completely. The voice of the woman they were mocking, calm and clear and without a tremor in it. "I am not ashamed of him," she said. "A person's worth is not what they carry in their pocket. If you cannot understand that, then perhaps you do not know me as well as you think." Her friends laughed again. Mariama did not. What her friends did not know, what no one in that market knew, not the traders, not the security guard who sometimes moved him along, not the woman who sold Bissap juice 3 stalls down, was that the man with the cracked bowl had a net worth that would have bought the entire street and the 3 streets behind it. What they could not have known was that he had chosen this, that the bowl, the shirt, the worn sandals were not misfortune. They were a question. And the woman who had just defended him without knowing who he was had just answered it in a way that would change both their lives completely. This is the story of a man who had everything and could not find the one thing money could not guarantee. A woman who had very little and gave it anyway. And the moment between them that a grandmother who had lived long enough to understand people saw coming from the very beginning. Stay with this story to the end. What Julian does when he finally tells the truth will leave you without words. And what Mariama says back will remind you that the rarest kind of love is the kind that begins before it knows what it is looking at. Julian Asante had learned at 22 that money changes the temperature of every room it enters, not always in bad ways. He had grown up watching his father build the Asante Group from a single import business in Accra into one of the most diversified holding companies in West Africa. He had watched his father shake hands with presidents and open factories and put 10,000 people to work. He had watched the money do genuinely good things. He was not naive about wealth. He respected what it took to build it. What he had not understood until he had it himself, until his own name was on the board, until the Forbes listing ran his photograph, until the invitations and the dinners and the women who looked at him with that particular expression that was admiration and calculation in equal measure, was what the money took from you in exchange. It took the room. The real room where people were themselves, where conversation did not have an agenda, where laughter was not performing for an audience. Every room Julian entered now had adjusted itself to the fact of him before he said a word. People were warmer than they would have been, more agreeable, more interested in his opinions than his opinions deserved. And beneath all of it, always, was the question he could never answer from the inside. Is this real? Do they see me? Or do they see the company and the portfolio and the name on the board? He was 33, and he had not had an honest conversation in 2 years. He told this to his grandmother on a Sunday afternoon in Accra, sitting in the garden she had maintained for 40 years, under the shade of a tree she had planted with his grandfather the year they were married. May Celeste was 78 and had the specific quality of very old people who have paid close attention to everything. The quality of knowing what people are before they have finished speaking. She listened to him without interrupting, which was rare, and also a gift. You are looking for someone who will love what is underneath the money, she said when he finished. I am looking for someone who would even know there was something underneath the money, he said. Everyone already knows who I am before they meet me. May Celeste was quiet for a moment. She poured her tea. Then become someone they do not know, she said simply. Remove everything that announces you. See who finds you when you are only yourself. He looked at her. You are telling me to disappear. I am telling you to go looking, she said. There is a difference. He sat with this for 3 weeks, and then he called his assistant, canceled 4 months of engagements, and booked a quiet apartment in Dakar under a name that was not his. He tried 3 versions of himself first. The civil servant version lasted 2 weeks. A modest apartment, a government office badge obtained through a friend. The ordinary commute, the ordinary lunch. The women he met this way were kind enough, but they knew a government salary had a ceiling, and the ceiling shaped how they looked at him. Not badly, just with the specific calculation of people who are planning a future and need to know what they are working with. The unemployed graduate version was harder. He had not known how much of a person's dignity is tied to what they do until he tried to have conversations without an answer to, "What do you do?" People did not ask follow-up questions. Eyes moved past him at parties. He was not treated cruelly. He was treated as if he were furniture, present, registered, unremarkable. The mechanic version was interesting. Men respected him for the skill. Women were warmer than he expected, but it was a small community. And the questions came quickly. Where did you train? Where is your family from? Do you know so-and-so? And he could feel the edges of the identity becoming visible too soon. And then one morning he passed Marché Kermel and saw a man sitting on the steps with a bowl, and the city moving around him as if he were not there. And something in Julian, the part that his grandmother had always said, paid too much attention to what he observed, sat down beside him and stayed. He came back the next day with a bowl of his own. He had not planned to stay long, a week, perhaps, to see what this version of invisibility felt like. What he had not planned for was the bookstore. It was a small shop at the edge of the market, the kind that should not have survived in an age of phones and screens, but had, through the particular stubbornness of its owner and the loyalty of people who still believed in the weight of a book in the hand. The sign was hand-painted. The window display changed every week, and every morning, without fail, a young woman arrived to open the shutters and arrange the day's offerings with the care of someone who genuinely believed the books deserved a good presentation. Her name was Mariama Diallo. He learned this because the market had the specific intimacy of a place where everyone knows the person 3 stalls down, and the woman who sold Bissap juice called her name across the noise of the morning crowd without needing to raise her voice very much. She noticed him on the 3rd day, not in the way people usually noticed a beggar, the eyes that look and then deliberately look away, the specific blindness that people practice to manage the discomfort of poverty. She noticed him the way people notice something they want to know more about. She brought him a sandwich. She did not make a production of it. She simply came over in her lunch break with 2 sandwiches and sat beside him on the steps as if this were entirely normal, and handed him one and ate the other and said, "The filling is chicken. If you do not eat chicken, I apologize." He ate chicken. "I am Mariama," she said. "Julian," he said. She nodded as if this were all the introduction necessary. They ate in a silence that was not uncomfortable. When she finished, she stood and said, "I open at 8 if you ever want to sit inside. It is cooler." She went back to her bookstore. She did not look back to see if he was watching, which meant she was doing it as a genuine offer, not as a performance of generosity. Julian sat on the steps for a long time after she went back inside. He thought about the room his grandmother had described, the real one, and he thought it might be possible that he had just been invited into it. He began going to the bookstore. Not every day at first. He was careful about how much space he took, but Mariama had meant the invitation, which he understood, because she greeted him the same way, whether there were customers watching or not. She gave him a corner chair and did not require him to buy anything to sit in it, which told him that the offer had not been about sales. She brought him tea in the afternoons. She talked to him about the books in the window display with the enthusiasm of someone who had read them and wanted the conversation a book deserves. He listened. He had always been good at listening. It was one of the things the boardroom had taken from him, the room always talking at him, and he found that with Mariama, the listening came back naturally. She was sharp. She'd been studying literature at university before the fees became impossible, and she had translated the interrupted education into a self-directed reading program that ran, as far as Julian could tell, across 3 languages and 2 centuries of West African writing. She recommended things to customers with the specific authority of someone who had formed actual opinions rather than reading the back cover. She told him one afternoon about the thing she had wanted before the bookstore job found her instead: a children's library. Not a shelf in a school, but a real library, a place children could come after school and at weekends and choose what they wanted to read without a curriculum telling them the choice was wrong. Dakar had children who loved stories and not enough places that trusted them with books. She had been saving slowly for years. The number she needed was still very far from the number she had. Julian listened to all of this. He asked specific questions. She was surprised by the questions, not flattery, not encouragement for its own sake, but the kind of questions that show someone has understood the structure of what you are saying. She answered them carefully, which meant the conversation went deeper than most conversations she had probably had about it. "You have thought about this for a long time," he said. "Since I was 9, she said. "There was a library in my neighborhood that closed. I used to go every Saturday. When it closed, I did not know what to do with the Saturdays." Julian did not say what he could have said. He simply said, "That is a good reason to build one." She looked at him for a moment, the look of someone not sure whether to believe they have been understood. And then she smiled, and it was the kind of smile that is not performed for anyone, that arrives because something has landed correctly. He was not prepared for what it did to him. The friends came on a Thursday. Mariama had mentioned them. Fatu and Aisatu, school friends, kind enough in the way that people are kind when things are going well and have not been tested. They came to the market on a Thursday afternoon and found Mariama talking to Julian on the steps during her break, sharing a bread from the bakery 2 stalls down. Julian saw their faces before Mariama did. The specific expression of people who have decided something before they have finished looking. What followed was not long. It did not need to be. Fatu said the things that people say when they believe cruelty is the same as concern. Aisatu laughed at the right moments to confirm that this was a shared position. They used the word shame twice. They used the word future once, as if Mariama's future were something they had authority over. Julian sat very still. He had been in many rooms where people performed superiority. He had never sat in a place where it was aimed at someone he cared about, which was a different experience entirely, and the stillness cost him something. Then Mariama spoke. "I am not ashamed of him," she said. "A person's worth is not what they carry in their pocket." The friends laughed. Mariama did not. She looked at them with the expression of someone who has made a decision clearly and would like it acknowledged. "If you cannot understand that," she said, "then perhaps you do not know me as well as you think." They left. Mariama came back to the steps and sat down beside him and did not say anything for a moment. "I am sorry about that," Julian said. "Do not be," she said. "They are not wrong that I have nothing to offer you practically. But that is not why I sit here. I sit here because you listen properly. That is rarer than money." Julian looked at the market, the traders, the movement, the ordinary machinery of a city going about its day, and felt the specific weight of what he was holding and had not yet given her. The truth, the whole shape of it. He was not ready yet. He was afraid of what happened after she knew. He was afraid because he had not, in a very long time, had something he was afraid to lose. She helped him find work. He had not asked her to, which meant it came from her own initiative, which made it worse in a particular way. The guilt of watching someone give you something you do not need and cannot receive honestly. She spoke to the manager of a textile factory on the outskirts of the city. She had a relationship with the manager's wife through the bookstore, and she explained that she knew a man who was capable and needed a chance. The manager met Julian, asked him a few questions, and offered him a position in the logistics department. Julian accepted. He worked the job, not as a performance, but because the alternative, pretending to go and coming back with an invented account, was a cruelty he would not add to what he was already carrying. He was careful not to be too good at it. He was good enough to be credible, not so obviously skilled that it raised questions. In the evenings, sometimes, he and Mariama walked home the same direction, which became a habit, which became the part of the day he organized the rest of the day around. She talked about the books she was reading. He talked about things he had observed, about what he had seen in the day, about the city. She laughed at his observations sometimes and pushed back on them other times. And the pushing back was better than the laughing because it meant she respected him enough to disagree. He was falling in love with her. This was not the outcome of the experiment. This was the end of the experiment, though he did not know how to say so yet. He called May Celeste one evening from the quiet of his apartment. "Grandmother," he said, "I think I have found it." "I know," she said. She sounded unsurprised. "I have to tell her the truth," he said. Yes, she said. The longer you wait, the more the truth costs. What if she cannot forgive it? May Celeste was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Julian, she is not being asked to forgive your wealth. She is being asked to forgive your fear. Those are different things. Give her the chance to tell the difference. He put the phone down. He sat with the city's sounds outside his window. The evening calls, the traffic, the particular music of Dakar settling in tonight. And he understood that the experiment had always been going to end here, with a conversation he could not script, with a woman whose response he could not predict, with the specific terror of someone who has found something real and must now risk losing it by being honest about it. He chose a morning. He went to the market early before the bookstore opened. He was sitting on the steps when Mariama arrived. She saw him and smiled. You are early today, she said. I need to tell you something, he said, before I lose the courage to say it properly. She stopped with her keys in her hand. She looked at him, really looked, the way she had looked at him from the beginning, the way that had undone him. She sat down beside him on the steps. Tell me, she said. He told her everything, not a summary. The full account, May Celeste's advice, the civil servant, the mechanic, the bowl on the steps, the specific morning he had decided to come back. His name in full, the company, what the company was worth. He told her about the boardroom and the rooms that adjusted themselves around him, and the specific loneliness of a life where no one sees underneath the fact of you. He told her about the sandwich she brought on the third day. He told her about the children's library. He did not tell her what he felt. That was not the telling she needed first. She needed the facts before she needed his feelings about the facts. When he finished, she was quiet. The market was beginning to move around them. Traders arriving. The first sounds of the day. Mariama sat very still with her keys in her hand. All this time, she said, yes, the factory job. Yes. She was quiet again. He waited. He had promised himself he would wait as long as she needed and not fill the silence with things that were about his own discomfort, rather than her understanding. I am angry, she said finally. I know, he said. You sat here for months and allowed me to... She stopped. She looked at the market. Then she looked back at him. The person I fell in love with was someone who listened, who asked about my books, who said that is a good reason to build one and meant it. She paused. Was that real? Any of it? Every word of it, he said. That is the only part of me that was never performance. She was quiet for a long time. I fell in love with the man on these steps, she said at last. Not your money. I did not know about your money. I fell in love with the man who listened to me talk about a library for 9-year-olds and understood what I meant. She set her keys down on her knee. I need time to be angry, because what you did was all so wrong. You cannot make someone fall in love with a version of you and then tell them the version was a disguise. You are right, he said. But, she said, and the word carried everything in it, the man underneath the disguise seems to be the same man. And I already love that man. So, I am in a very complicated position. Julian had not expected to feel like laughing, but he felt something close to it. The specific relief of someone who has told the truth and found that the truth was survivable. What do you need from me? He asked. Time, she said. And the library. He looked at her. Not as a gift, she said immediately, reading his face. As a commitment. If you are who you say you are and you meant what you said about building things that matter, then help me build it. Not for me. For the 9-year-olds who have not found their Saturday place yet. Yes, he said, without calculating, without conditions. She picked up her keys. She stood up. She looked at him one more time with the expression that had undone him from the beginning. Clear, direct, seeing exactly what she was looking at. Come inside, she said. I will make tea. He followed her into the bookstore. The Bibliothèque Mariama Diallo Asante opened 18 months later in a building 2 streets from Marché Kermel. Not the largest library in the city, but the right size for what it was. The size of a place that children can find their way to, that does not overwhelm, that has chairs at the right height and windows that let in the afternoon light and a woman at the desk who will tell you the name of the book you are looking for before you have finished describing it. The name above the door had been Julian's insistence. Mariama had argued for something simpler. Julian had said that the person who had dreamed of this place for 24 years deserved to have her name on it. Mariama had said that was sentimental. Julian had said he was allowed to be sentimental about exactly one thing, and this was it. The name stayed. On the opening day, Fatu and Isa too came. They had heard, as everyone had heard. They stood outside for a moment before they came in, which was the only acknowledgement any of them made of the Thursday afternoon on the market steps, and which was enough. Mariama greeted them warmly because she was that kind of person. May Celeste came from Accra. She was 79 now and moved more slowly, but she moved. She walked through the library with the specific expression of someone who has given good advice and is now standing in the evidence of it. She ran her hand along a shelf of books. She looked at Julian and then at Mariama, and then back at Julian. She is the answer, the old woman said quietly. I know, Julian said. Not to the experiment, May Celeste said. To the question you have been asking since you were young, whether there was something worth finding underneath everything you had been given. She patted his arm. There is, you found it. Now do not be foolish about it. He was not foolish about it. A man who has everything and cannot find the one thing money cannot buy is not a man who needs more money. He is a man who needs to remember what he is before the money and find someone who can see that person clearly. The mistake is to believe that stripping everything away is the same as being honest. Julian had removed the wealth and kept the deception, which meant the experiment was never truly clean. What made it survivable, what made it something other than a manipulation, was that the person underneath the disguise was genuinely the person, that the listening was real, that the question about the library was real, that the falling was real. Mariama had been right to be angry. She had also been right about something else, that the love she felt was for a man, not a status, and that the man had been there in front of her all along, sitting on steps with a bowl, listening carefully, asking the questions that showed he understood. Some people spend their whole lives performing the version of themselves they believe others want. They lose, slowly, the ability to locate the real version underneath the performance. Julian had been in danger of this. His grandmother had seen it. The market steps had interrupted it. Mariama had given him back the room, the real one, the one without the performance, the one where a person can be seen for exactly what they are. He had walked into it with a bowl and worn sandals. He had walked out with everything he had been looking for. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. Your support keeps these stories alive. There is another powerful story waiting for you right now. Go ahead and watch it. I promise it is worth your time.